Layla stood at the kitchen window, absently stirring her coffee as she gazed out at the autumn leaves swirling in the breeze. At 48, she felt adrift. Her divorce finalized 6 months ago, her only daughter away at college, and the publishing house she'd poured her heart into for 2 decades now struggling in the digital age. The life she had carefully constructed over the years had crumbled, leaving her grasping for a new sense of purpose and identity. With a sigh, she glanced at her watch and realized she was running late for her Monday morning staff meeting. Gulping down the last of her coffee, she smoothed her silk blouse, grabbed her laptop bag, and hurried out the door of her brownstone. The crisp October air nipped at her cheeks as she strode down the busy Manhattan sidewalk, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm. Lost in thought about the difficult decisions facing her company, Layla didn't notice the young man rounding the corner at a jog until it was too late. They collided with a painful thud, sending her stumbling backwards and her bag flying from her grip. Strong hands grasped her shoulders, steadying her before she could fall. "I'm so sorry. Are you all right?" a deep voice asked urgently. Layla looked up, momentarily stunned by the striking green eyes peering at her with concern. The man before her was tall and athletic, with tousled dark hair and day-old stubble shadowing his jaw. He looked to be in his late 20s or early 30s, easily 20 years her junior. A blush crept up her neck as she realized his hands were still on her shoulders, radiating warmth through the thin fabric of her blouse. I'm fine," she stammered, taking a step back. "No harm done." The young man quickly retrieved her bag from the sidewalk, brushing it off before handing it to her with an apologetic smile. "I should have been paying more attention. I'm late for a job interview and was in too much of a rush." "As was I," Layla admitted ruefully, "though I'm headed to a much less exciting staff meeting." She paused, taking in his appearance, wrinkled dress shirt partially untucked, tie askew. "If you'd like, I can help straighten you up a bit before your interview. It's the least I can do after nearly knocking you over." He hesitated for a moment before nodding gratefully. "That would be amazing, thank you. I am Lucas, by the way." "Layla," she replied with a small smile. Setting down her bag, she reached up to adjust his tie, hyper-aware of their proximity as her fingers worked deftly at his collar. "There," she said softly, smoothing the fabric. "Much better." Lucas caught her hand as she began to pull away, his touch sending an unexpected jolt through her. "Thank you, Layla," he murmured, his gaze holding hers for a heated moment before he released her fingers. Flustered, Layla took a step back, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Good luck with your interview," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "I'm sure you'll do wonderfully." With a final smile and nod of thanks, Lucas continued on his way. Layla watched him go for a moment, her heart racing inexplicably. Shaking her head to clear it, she hurried towards her office, pushing thoughts of mesmerizing green eyes from her mind. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings and difficult decisions as Layla worked to keep her publishing house afloat. She found her thoughts often drifting to her brief encounter with Lucas, chiding herself for being so affected by a man young enough to be her son. It was ridiculous to feel this schoolgirl flutter in her chest every time she recalled his touch, his smile. She told herself it was simply a result of her loneliness, of feeling unmoored in this new chapter of her life. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when fate intervened once more. Layla was leaving her favorite little Italian restaurant, having treated herself to dinner after a particularly grueling day at the office. As she stood under the awning fumbling with her umbrella, a familiar voice made her freeze. "We have to stop meeting like this," Lucas said with a grin, appearing beside her. "Though I promise not to knock you over this time." Layla's breath caught as she turned to face him, taken aback by how even more handsome he looked in the soft glow of the streetlights. He wore a well-fitted charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, his hair slightly damp from the rain. "Lucas," she managed, hoping the dim lighting hid the blush she could feel warming her cheeks. "What a surprise. How did your interview go?" His smile widened. "Fantastically, thanks to your help. I start next week at Harrison and Reed Publishing." Layla's eyebrows shot up. "That's my company," she said with a surprised laugh. "I'm the owner and CEO." Lucas' eyes widened. You're joking. I had no idea. I'm so sorry for being so informal, Miss Gardner, she supplied. But please, call me Layla. I'm not one for stuffy formalities. She hesitated for a moment before adding, I was just about to head home, but would you like to grab a drink? We could chat about the company, get to know each other a bit before you start. A part of her knew it was a bad idea, that she should maintain professional boundaries. But a larger part craved his company, wanting to recapture that spark she'd felt during their first encounter. Lucas' answering smile was warm and eager. I'd love to. They made their way to a cozy wine bar a few blocks away, settling into a secluded corner booth. As they sipped their drinks, conversation flowed easily between them. Layla found herself captivated by Lucas' quick wit and passion for literature. He had majored in English and harbored dreams of becoming a writer himself one day. What about you? He asked, leaning in slightly. How did you end up running a publishing house? Layla traced the stem of her wine glass, a wistful smile playing at her lips. I've always been a voracious reader. Books were my escape, my comfort, my inspiration. I started as an editorial assistant right out of college and worked my way up. When the previous owner retired 15 years ago, he offered me the chance to buy him out. It was terrifying, but I knew I had to take the leap. Lucas' gaze was admiring as he studied her face. That's incredible. You must be so proud of all you've accomplished. She shrugged, feeling suddenly self-conscious under his scrutiny. It hasn't been easy lately. The industry is changing so rapidly, and we're struggling to keep up. Some days I wonder if I'm the right person to lead the company anymore. Without thinking, Lucas reached across the table and covered her hand with his. From everything I've heard about you, there's no one better suited for the job. You have a keen eye for talent and a true love for storytelling. That's what will keep Harrison and Reed thriving, no matter how the delivery method changes. Layla's breath hitched at the contact, her skin tingling where he touched her. She knew she should pull away, maintain some professional distance, but the warmth in his eyes and the sincerity in his voice drew her in like a moth to flame. Thank you, she said softly. That means a lot. They gazed at each other for a long moment, the air between them charged with unspoken attraction. Finally, Layla cleared her throat and reluctantly withdrew her hand. It's getting late, she murmured. We should probably call it a night. Lucas nodded, though she could see the reluctance in his eyes. They gathered their things and stepped out into the damp night, the earlier rain having slowed to a light drizzle. Let me walk you home, Lucas offered. It's the least I can do after monopolizing your evening. Layla knew she should decline, but found herself nodding instead. They strolled side by side, their arms occasionally brushing. The sexual tension between them was palpable, making Layla acutely aware of every glance, every accidental touch. All too soon, they arrived at her brownstone. Layla turned to face Lucas, her heart racing as she met his intense gaze. Thank you for the company, she said, and the conversation. It was unexpected, but lovely. Lucas took a step closer, his voice low and husky. Layla, I know this is complicated. I'm about to start working for you, and the age difference, but I can't deny there's something between us. Please tell me you feel it too. Layla's breath caught in her throat. Every fiber of her being screamed that this was a bad idea, that she should send him away and forget this foolishness. But the longing in his eyes mirrored her own, and she found herself powerless to resist. I feel it, she whispered. With a groan, Lucas closed the distance between them, capturing her lips in a searing kiss. Layla melted against him, her arms winding around his neck as she returned the kiss with equal fervor. His hands splayed across her back, pulling her flush against his firm body as their tongues tangled. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Layla rested her forehead against his chest. We shouldn't be doing this, she murmured. Lucas tilted her chin up, meeting her conflicted gaze. Maybe not, he agreed. But it feels right, doesn't it? We can figure out the rest later. Layla knew she was standing at a crossroads. She could send Lucas away now, nip this in the bud before it had a chance to bloom into something messy and complicated. Or she could take a risk, open herself up to the possibility of joy and passion after years of putting everyone else's needs before her own. With a deep breath, she made her choice. Taking Lucas by the hand, she led him up the steps to her door. The next morning, Layla woke to warm sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. For a moment, she savored the feeling of contentment that filled her. Then reality came crashing back, bringing with it a tidal wave of guilt and uncertainty. She carefully extricated herself from Lucas' embrace, slipping on a silk robe before padding to the kitchen to start a pot of coffee. As she waited for it to brew, she leaned against the counter and closed her eyes, memories of the previous night washing over her. It had been passionate, intense, unlike anything she'd experienced in years. Lucas had worshipped her body with a reverence that made her feel desirable and alive in ways she'd forgotten were possible. But in the harsh light of day, doubt began to creep in. What had she been thinking, sleeping with a man nearly half her age? A man who was about to become her employee, no less. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. She opened her eyes to find Lucas standing in the doorway, wearing only his boxer briefs. His hair was adorably mussed, his expression a mix of uncertainty and hope. "Good morning," he said softly. "I wasn't sure if I should stay or go." Layla's heart clenched at the vulnerability in his voice. Despite her misgivings, she couldn't bring herself to push him away. "Stay," she found herself saying. "Have some coffee with me." Relief washed over his features as he moved closer, stopping just shy of touching her. "Layla, about last night. I meant what I said. I know it's complicated, but I want to explore whatever this is between us, if you'll let me." She studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity or ulterior motives, but all she saw was genuine affection and desire. With a shaky exhale, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, "but we need to be careful, if anyone at work found out." Lucas closed the remaining distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. "I understand. Well, be discreet. I won't do anything to jeopardize your position or reputation. I can't walk away from this. From you." Unable to resist any longer, Layla leaned in and kissed him softly. It was a new day, full of uncertainty and potential pitfalls. But as Lucas' arms encircled her, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected connection could bring some light back into her world. The next few weeks were a delicate balancing act as Layla and Lucas navigated their budding relationship alongside their new professional dynamic. At work, they maintained a carefully professional demeanor, though Layla often caught herself stealing glances at Lucas across the conference room, or feeling a thrill when their hands brushed as he handed her a report. After hours, they would meet discreetly at out-of-the-way restaurants or hole-in-the-wall bars, where they were unlikely to run into anyone from the publishing world. On weekends, they spent long, lazy mornings in bed at Layla's brownstone, talking for hours about their hopes and fears, their pasts and dreams for the future. Despite her initial reservations, Layla found herself falling hard and fast. Lucas had an infectious enthusiasm for life that rekindled her own passion, both for her work and for the simple joys she'd neglected in recent years. He encouraged her to take risks with acquiring edgier, more experimental manuscripts. His fresh perspective breathed new life into marketing strategies that had grown stale. For his part, Lucas seemed to blossom under Layla's mentorship and affection. She pushed him to refine his writing, spending evenings curled up on the couch as she offered feedback on his short stories. He confided his insecurities about measuring up to her success, and she reassured him with both words and tender caresses. But as their connection deepened, so too did the complications. Layla found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, terrified that someone would discover their secret. She agonized over the power imbalance in their working relationship, questioning whether it was ethical to continue their romance given her position of authority. Lucas tried to ease her fears, reminding her that he was a consenting adult who had pursued her as much as she had him. But she couldn't shake the niggling doubt that she was taking advantage, that she was somehow stunting his growth by tying him to a woman so much older. These concerns came to a head one chilly November evening. They had plans to meet for dinner, but Layla texted to cancel at the last minute, claiming a work emergency. In truth, she had spent the afternoon in a panic spiral after overhearing two employees gossiping about how much time Lucas spent in her office. An hour later, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Lucas standing there, his expression a mix of concern and frustration. "What's going on, Layla?" he asked as he stepped inside. "And don't say it's work. I know you better than that by now." Layla sighed, running a hand through her hair. "We can't keep doing this, Lucas. It's not fair to you, and it's putting my entire career at risk. I'm twice your age, for God's sake. You should be out living your life, not tied down to someone with so much baggage." Lucas' jaw clenched. "Don't do that," he said, his voice low and intense. "Don't try to make decisions about my life for me. I'm not some naive kid you're taking advantage of. I'm a grown man who knows exactly what he wants." He moved closer, cupping her face in his hands. "And what I want is you, Layla. All of you. Your brilliance, your passion, your fears and insecurities. I don't care about the age difference or what anyone else thinks. When I'm with you, I feel more alive than I ever have before." Tears welled in Layla's eyes as she placed her hands over his. "I'm scared, Lucas," she admitted in a whisper. "Scared of how much I feel for you. Scared of losing everything I've worked for if this blows up in our faces." "I know," he murmured, resting his forehead against hers. "But isn't it worth the risk? We can be careful, keep things quiet until we figure out a long-term solution. All I know is that I can't walk away from this, from us." Layla closed her eyes, allowing his words to wash over her. The thought of ending things, of never again feeling the warmth of his embrace or the tenderness of his kiss, was unbearable. With a shaky exhale, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll find a way to make it work." Lucas' answering smile was radiant as he pulled her into a passionate kiss. As she melted against him, Layla felt a renewed sense of hope blooming in her chest. They would face challenges, certainly, but in that moment, she allowed herself to believe that their love could overcome any obstacle. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of stolen moments and secret rendezvous. Layla and Lucas became experts at maintaining their professional facade at work while nurturing their deepening bond in private. They took turns cooking elaborate meals for each other, spent weekends exploring hidden corners of the city, and stayed up late into the night, sharing their most closely guarded dreams and fears. As winter gave way to spring, Layla found herself blossoming alongside the crocuses, pushing up through the soil. Lucas' unwavering support and youthful enthusiasm reignited her passion for the publishing industry. She began taking more risks, greenlighting edgier manuscripts, and implementing innovative marketing strategies. To her delight and relief, the company's fortunes began to turn around. Lucas, too, was thriving both personally and professionally. Under Layla's mentorship, he quickly became one of the most promising young editors at the company. His own writing improved by leaps and bounds as Layla pushed him to dig deeper and take creative risks. They spent many evenings curled up on her couch, heads bent together over his latest short story, as she offered gentle critiques and words of encouragement. But as their relationship deepened, so too did the complications of their situation. Layla found it increasingly difficult to compartmentalize her feelings for Lucas when they were at work. She caught herself staring at him during meetings, her heart racing when their hands brushed as he handed her a report. The guilt of their deception weighed heavily on her, especially when interacting with other employees who had no idea of the true nature of their relationship. For his part, Lucas struggled with the secrecy required to protect Layla's reputation and career. He longed to shout his love for her from the rooftops, to take her hand as they walked down the street without fear of being seen. The strain of constantly looking over their shoulders began to take its toll on both of them. The breaking point came on a warm evening in late May. Layla and Lucas had slipped away for a rare midweek date, enjoying dinner at a quiet bistro in a neighborhood far from their usual haunts. As they lingered over dessert, Lucas reached across the table to take Layla's hand. "Move in with me," he said, his green eyes shining with hope and determination. Layla's breath caught in her throat. "What? Lucas, we can't. It's too risky, if anyone found out." He squeezed her hand gently. I know it's a big step, but Layla, I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending that what we have isn't the most important thing in my life. I want to wake up next to you every morning, to build a real life together. Tears welled in Layla's eyes as conflicting emotions warred within her. The thought of truly sharing her life with Lucas filled her with a joy she hadn't dared to hope for, but the practical considerations loomed large in her mind. "It's not that simple," she said softly. "What about work? The board would never understand. I could lose everything I've worked for." A flicker of frustration passed over Lucas' face. "So, I'll find a solution. Maybe I could transfer to a different department, or even look for a job at another publishing house. There has to be a way for us to be together without compromising your position." Layla withdrew her hand, suddenly feeling every one of the years between them. "Lucas, I can't ask you to give up your career for me. You're just starting out. You have so much potential. I won't be the reason you sacrifice your dreams." "You're not asking, I'm offering," Lucas insisted, leaning forward intently. "And you're not a sacrifice, Layla. You're my dream. Everything else is just details we can work out together." His words struck a chord deep within her, unleashing a torrent of emotion she'd been holding back for months. "But what if it doesn't work out?" she whispered, giving voice to her deepest fear. "What if we take this leap and you wake up in 5 years resenting me for holding you back? Or worse, what if you decide you want someone younger, someone who can give you children and grow old with you?" Lucas' expression softened as he reached out to cup her cheek. "Oh, Layla, is that what's been holding you back all this time? Don't you know by now that you're it for me? I don't want some hypothetical future with anyone else. I want you, exactly as you are, for as long as you'll have me." A sob escaped Layla's throat as the walls she'd built around her heart began to crumble. Lucas quickly moved to her side of the booth, gathering her in his arms as she cried. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice muffled against his chest. "I'm scared of how much I love you, of how much it would destroy me to lose you." Lucas pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I know, my love, I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of letting fear keep us apart. We're stronger together, Layla. Whatever comes, we'll face it as a team." As her tears subsided, Layla pulled back to meet Lucas' gaze. She saw in his eyes the same love, the same certainty that had drawn her to him from the beginning. In that moment, she made her choice. "Okay," she whispered, a tremulous smile spreading across her face. "Let's do it. Let's move in together." Lucas' answering grin was radiant as he pulled her into a passionate kiss, heedless of their public surroundings. As Layla melted into his embrace, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. There would be challenges ahead, difficult conversations and hard decisions to make, but for the first time in years, she was truly excited for the future. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of activity as Layla and Lucas prepared for their big step. They decided to find a new place together, a fresh start that belonged to both of them. Hours were spent poring over real estate listings, debating the merits of various neighborhoods, and discussing how to blend their distinct styles into a cohesive home. As they packed up Layla's brownstone, she found herself letting go of more than just physical possessions. With each box she filled, she shed a little more of the fear and insecurity that had held her back. Lucas worked alongside her, offering support and reassurance whenever she faltered. The night before their move, they sat surrounded by boxes in Layla's nearly empty living room, sharing a bottle of wine and reflecting on how far they'd come. "I never thought I'd find this kind of love again," Layla mused, leaning her head on Lucas' shoulder. "After my divorce, I was so sure that part of my life was over. And then you came crashing into me, quite literally, and turned everything upside down." Lucas chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best collision of my life. Though I have to admit, I was terrified that first day at the office when I realized you were my boss. I thought for sure you'd want nothing to do with me." Layla tilted her head to meet his gaze, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Oh, I wanted plenty to do with you. I just tried very hard not to show it." "Well, I'm glad you failed spectacularly at that," Lucas teased, pulling her closer for a lingering kiss. As they broke apart, Layla's expression grew more serious. "Are you sure about this, Lucas? It's not too late to change your mind. I'd understand if... Lucas silenced her with another quick kiss. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Layla. You're stuck with me now, I'm afraid. Layla's answering smile was radiant as she snuggled closer to him. They spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about the past year and dreaming about their future together. As they finally drifted off to sleep on the air mattress they'd set up, Layla felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. The morning of the move dawned bright and clear. Layla woke early, her stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and nerves. As she stood in the kitchen waiting for the coffee to brew, strong arms encircled her waist from behind. "Good morning, beautiful," Lucas murmured, pressing a kiss to the nape of her neck. "Ready for our big day?" Layla leaned back against him, savoring the warmth of his embrace. "As ready as I'll ever be. Though I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about telling everyone at work." They had decided to be upfront about their relationship once they were living together, knowing it would be impossible to keep secret for long. Layla had scheduled a meeting with the board of directors for the following week to disclose the situation and discuss any necessary changes to their working arrangement. Lucas gave her a reassuring squeeze. "It's going to be okay, Layla. Well, face whatever comes together. And no matter what happens with work, we have each other. That's what really matters." Layla turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. "When did you get so wise, "I learned from the best," he replied with a grin, leaning down to capture her lips in a tender kiss. As they broke apart, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the movers. Layla took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Well, here we go. Ready to start our new chapter?" Lucas laced his fingers through hers, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "With you? Always." Hand in hand, they went to answer the door, ready to embrace whatever the future held. As they stepped into the bright morning sunlight, Layla felt a sense of possibility unfurling within her. She didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but she knew that with Lucas by her side, she could face anything. Their love story had begun with an unexpected collision on a busy Manhattan street. Now, as they prepared to build a life together, Layla realized that sometimes the most beautiful journeys start with a simple twist of fate. She and Lucas had found each other against all odds, bridging the gap of years and circumstances to forge a connection that defied convention. As the movers began loading their belongings into the truck, Layla watched Lucas directing traffic with his easy charm and infectious enthusiasm. Her heart swelled with love and gratitude for this man who had awakened parts of her she thought long dormant. There would be challenges ahead, she knew. The road they had chosen wouldn't always be smooth. But as Lucas caught her eye and flashed her that brilliant smile that never failed to make her knees weak, Layla knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. This was just the beginning of their story. And oh, what a glorious adventure it promised to be.